Good evening. I hereby call this regular meeting of the Nacogdoches ISD Board of Trustees to order. Let the record show that a quorum is present, and notice of this meeting was posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Please remember that items shown on the agenda do not have to be taken in order, and please join us in turning your cell phones to silent mode. Thank you for joining us tonight, whether you are here in person or joining us via YouTube. The board will now conduct an executive closed session to discuss the items posted on our agenda pursuant to the following provisions of the Texas Open Meetings Act and as allowed by Texas Government Code sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.129. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussion in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in open session. It is now 5:02 p.m.
Oh, I hope that room is warm.
Yes, sir.
Why don't we turn the heat on for us?
Oh, it's nice and toasty.
Oh, good, good. Hey, Miss Ash.
All right, the board is now reconvening into open session at 6:07 PM. I will ask Leah Beth App tonight to give our invocation.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you, first of all, for the privilege of meeting here and discussing the needs of our children. We ask for your help, and we ask that you grant us wisdom. And we do pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. If you'll stand and say the pledges with us.
Don't run, you're good.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right, and you can see all of the wonderful gifts along the dais tonight. January is School Board Recognition Month, and I believe that Mr. Linebarger is going to say a few words.
Thank you. Good evening, President Fitch, board members, Superintendent Trujillo. Yes, President Fitch, you took away my lead-in. I was going to ask if you all had noticed the gifts up there. There's gift baskets and some items from Student Support Services, from the district's Bilingual department, from Student Council at Nacogdoches High School. There's some cookies in here from Mike Moses Middle School. I've heard from good, reliable sources that they are quite tasty. And, of course, I think you already had some of the treats that the Federation of Women's Clubs brought tonight. So that's just some of the things here tonight for Board Appreciation Month. Now, you might remember a year ago when we were holding board meetings by Zoom, we compiled a video and played it during the board Zoom meeting in January of 2021. The video went over so well, we wanted to do it again. However, COVID has again caused us to deviate from our plans. Even before last week's closure, our campuses were a bit overwhelmed by simply holding school, let alone sending me some video footage. So tonight, we're going to go ahead and acknowledge that it is Board Appreciation Month and thank all of you for your hard work and commitment you put forth in your roles as trustees. But the video, which is still going to happen, will not be shown until next month. And, needless to say, it's been a challenging year. Again, this is becoming kind of a constant refrain. School boards around East Texas, around the state, around the nation, have faced choices and have been required to make decisions we couldn't have dreamed of 2 years ago. And think about that. 2 years ago right now, things were still normal. All those challenges have been well documented, but I also want to point out some of the things that the board has done for the district. A little more than a year ago, when the state of Texas let expire a directive providing teachers and school staff with additional leave days to guard against COVID-related absences, you okayed 10 days COVID leave for the spring semester in 2021. Last fall, when COVID cases again surged, you implemented a similar leave package for the current academic year. Additionally, you signed off on longevity stipends that rewarded those who returned to the district for the 21-22 academic year, and those decisions were greatly appreciated. Trustees commit time. I know that. I don't have a full understanding for all the time that you have to spend on this job. With the promise of no compensation, that's right, there's no pay coming if you guys are still waiting on that. But it's with the expectation you make decisions that benefit our students and staff. And for that, I thank you, the district thanks you, and I promise next month we're going to have a really cool video.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you on behalf of this board for all these wonderful gifts. And I don't think I overstate when I say, well, we're humbled and so appreciative. The real heroes out there, the people doing the real work, are the teachers. And we never want to lose sight of that and expressing our appreciation to what they're doing day in and day out. And I would say especially right now, when you've got teachers covering extra classrooms for their peers who are out sick. It's an honor to serve those teachers. Would anybody else like to add any comments?
Yes, I would. Being a former NISD employee, my idea of school board was very different than it is today. And I think one of the reasons is that I get the opportunity to sit here and be able to share my experiences and be able to do what we can for the benefit of our teachers, our students, and our community. And it's a real commitment by all of us here. I think all of us take our responsibilities seriously, and I think you've seen that. And hiring a great superintendent that has kept us in a good vision. We are all here together, and we're doing what we need to do for our community. Thanks for your support. I really appreciate it.
Anyone else?
You want me to speak? I would like to extend, say thank you to Ms. Fitch and to Mr. Montoya, but I would like to go even further to include all of NISD employees, custodial workers, counselors, administration, bus drivers, whatever role you play in this district. We want to thank you. We see you and we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to add one other group, and that's every volunteer and all the businesses that help in everything that's going on.
Thank you all. With that, we will now move to item 5 on our agenda, public hearing regarding the Texas Academic Performance Report, or TAPER, for the 2020-2021 school year. This is a public hearing, so after the presentation, members of the audience will have an opportunity to comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes and must pertain to the TAPER report. Dr. Corley, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, President Finch, board members, and Superintendent Trujillo. The report this afternoon will focus on 2021 data sets as well as some previous year data sets that we're required by state to communicate with our stakeholders. I want to draw our attention to a report that Dr. Hill presented in August. It actually was a data review. And if y'all remember, there was all these little bar graphs everywhere, and we really looked intently at our trajectory from, I think it was 2017 to 2021, and it helped us see kind of where we've been and where we're going. And so I hope that we'll make those connections as we proceed. In regards to that, the district has made some decisions to provide support in these new times for education, and some of those include the Resilient Support School Program. We're actually in year 2 of 3 of that program. In addition to that, we were awarded and implemented the vetted Texas Tutor Corps program to provide support for our campuses, because we know that statewide, nationwide, there's a need for that support on campuses. And then finally, we are participating in a 21st Century grant that is a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club of Deep East Texas, and they're providing after-school programs for 3 of our 6 elementary campuses. And so those are just a few of the amazing things that our faculty and staff here in the district are really supporting to put into place, and kind of innovative initiatives that they have just taken and implemented. I can't say enough of how proud of the work that I've observed from our faculty and staff here in the district. So at this time, I'm going to turn our attention to the report for this evening that we're required to present. And as we go through this section, just please remember that it's not our current data, that it's either last year's data or prior year's data from 2021. If I'm not mistaken, in our board book this evening, the presentation begins on page 8. And it'll cover 8 sections, I'm sorry. Oh dear. Bear with me just a minute. Here I go. Okay, there are 8 sections, I apologize. As we move into the first section of the taper report or the annual report, it's going to focus a lot on academic data sets. The taper report has had a facelift this year. It's been redesigned. If you notice, that's more colorful. It has more lines that help us really see the connections between the previous years and our current year, and so that's pretty exciting. In section 1, on the cover page, you're going to see that there's several different topics that's covered on the cover page. We have our accountability rating, and I will note that we've had the same rating for district and campuses because last year it was not rated, declared a state of disaster. And then we also always have our special education determination status on the cover page, as well as information regarding the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, or ASVAB. This information is only reported on that cover page if the district did not offer that opportunity to students. And then finally, we also have usually distinction designations, but again, because of our status in education, there were none reported last year. Our next slide takes us directly to our accountability ratings, and we kind of can see that longitudinal overview. The last time we were rated under the A through F accountability rating system was 18-19. And then we had spring school closure and spring of 2020, and then last year we had the not rated status. But we are anticipating that this year, with our instructional practices in place, we will receive accountability ratings in all domain areas. This slide shows the district longitudinal analysis of our ratings over time, and it goes all the way back from 12-13, before there even was an A through F accountability rating system. And it also shows, it says RDA, and that stands for Results Driven Accountability System for special education specifically. When we're identified as need intervention in any of the areas that's reported in RDA, and that could be special education, bilingual, there's other program areas that they're really looking at specific indicators. But for special education, there's 18 different indicators that they're looking at every single year. And they can range from student performance to how students are placed in educational settings, looking for that least restrictive environment. It could also include areas of disciplinary reason codes for students within that special education group. So it's a vast range of different indicators that they're looking at. When we're identified, we work as we have a team here in the district, and we receive state guidance in the form of a strategic support plan. This is a very extensive, comprehensive plan that includes not only data calculations, but we have to identify root causes and problem statements to determine what steps are we going to take to make significant improvement on those performance levels. So that's always a team effort. It changes from year to year based on the data that's presented in our reports. On this slide, I want to show you STAR testing results for special education student groups and their passing rates. We can see that while there was a decline in points, like for example, from year to year, we may see in math, from math 18-19 to 19-20 to 20-21, we are intentionally tracking where we are when our students hit academic performance in those areas. Some of the root causes that we've identified, not only for state assessment with this student group, include our increase in student enrollment, which means that we have more special education faculty and more trainings to support their efforts that are aligned to general education, and that's really exciting when you see the collaborative meetings that go into place, and you see our teachers from different program areas, and they have that first best teach because they're collaborating, and it's kind of like a prevention step that's been implemented. So these goals are set, based on the data that's presented. They can be different each year, and they really provide a structure for not only instructional but system development. When you look at the disciplinary bar graph that is projected, you can see that we've had a significant decline there between the year 1920 and 2021. So there are some efforts here in the district where I know Mr. Tarvin, our Director of Student Management and Operations, he works very closely with our, not only our Student Support Service Department, but our assistant principals to make sure that we're in compliance and that those reason codes are being monitored on a routine basis to make sure we're doing what's best for our students. In the TAPER report, you're also going to find data sets that are reported for 2021 and 2019. You're going to see that because we have to remind ourselves that in 2020, STAR was canceled. We didn't have any data points there. So that's what we have. That's what we're looking at. It's reported on all three performance levels: approaches grade level, meets grade level, master's grade level, for all assessments, for all grades, all subjects. And then we have academic growth, which hasn't been reported since 1819 because it requires consecutive years of data. And we're excited that we're going to be rated on that this year because when we talk about student growth, we're talking about all students, and we're talking about where are we and where can we go to show that growth. This slide actually reports our data sets from 12-13 all the way to 2021. And when I was preparing, I really focused on the 18-19, which is a deep blue bar graph there, and then the one right beside it, 2021. And my takeaways from that were that we see a decline. We see a decline first in approaches grade level at 9 points. We see a decline at meets grade level at 6 points. And at the master's grade level, we see a 9-point decrease. And so while we're aware of that and we're noting that, I also have to be mindful that those percentages and declines are 10% or less. And so again, it shows the hard work that our teachers put forth during that year when we had remote instruction during the fall semester, and then we encouraged students to come back. I think it was like January 25th, and our teachers just really stayed the course, and it's evident when you make those comparisons in the STAR performance.
Can I pause right there and make a comment?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to point out, I think your point's very good, but I also want to highlight, you'll notice from 15-16 on, we were at an upward trajectory until COVID hit. And then COVID hit in March of 20, and we went to an online format. So I just want to assure you, and I know y'all are working hard, and I think that we see that upward trajectory there, and what this clearly shows is the slide that we took because of the shutdown in the online. So
Yes,
I hate to interrupt your presentation,
No.
but
It's more
I
than
wanted
welcome.
to recognize the hard work that we were going in the right direction.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And another trend that was noticed was that even when we're looking at the 2021 bar graph there, in previous years, we were either at where we were last year or below where we were last year. And that's, something to point out, that our teachers just really jumped in with the unknown system, new implementations, new educational settings, and stayed the course. Our next slide here focuses on bilingual education and English as a second language. I pulled the same information, insights from this is that while there is a decrease from 1920 to 2021, when you look at the point differential between those, it doesn't exceed that 10-point range. So this report includes the STAR performance for all the emergent bilingual students that's reported for both of those years. The bilingual and ESL department work closely with campuses to provide student academic supports, to really focus on the linguistic needs, because they're monitoring that very closely. We have specialists on the campuses, and they're not only monitoring just reading and writing, they're really focusing on the other pieces of language, listening and speaking. And so that's going to be exciting to see. This slide shows our STAR participation. And these rates are carefully monitored every time we have a state assessment administration window. I've seen faculty and staff, we have school counselors, we have campus principals, campus testing coordinators, our attendance office. They have systems in place where they coordinate. If a student isn't there, we get on the phone, we go to their house, we do everything that we can to encourage them and provide that motivation piece to get them to come take the opportunity. And I think that attributes to our rate of participation, which in 18-19 we're at 99, excellent, and then at 2021, 97%, which is still higher than significantly higher than the region and state numbers that are there. So I'm proud of the other work that they do every time to get our students up there. On the next few slides, we're going to be reviewing graduation and dropout rates. We're still in section 1. This next slide is a lot of fun. We have a lot of things going on here. But I will tell you, for graduation rate, for accountability purposes, they look at a 4-year graduation rate, 5- and 6-year graduation rate, and they take the highest out of the three consecutive years. And so basically, to explain that a little bit further, you have the 4-year graduation rate. That's the original cohort that started as a group together in 9th grade. And then the 5-year is that same cohort of students, but they added additional year because we might have graduates that obtained credit in that year. And then the same thing with 6-year graduates, and they follow the same cohort for students for 2 more years that it might have taken them to graduate. And so when you're looking at these bar graphs, if you look at the very first one, that's the class of 20, our original cohort for 4 years. And then if we skip to the green there, that's going to be our class of 19, our 5-year. And then proceeding on over to the turquoise bar graph, that's going to be our class of 18. And so when we look at that, our highest rate would be 94.5%. And so that's what the state would take for our accountability purposes. I did look carefully at how that compares to the district and the state. And so when I looked at the district highest, of course, that was 94.5, and the state highest, when I looked at their 3 categories for the 2020, starting with 2024-year cohort, their highest was 92.6. And so our highest was higher both years when you looked at the 3 different groups. Our next slide reports annual dropout rates for 18-19 and 19-20. We keep in mind that this is a data set that's reported actually 2 years behind, which is why we don't see 2021 yet. That'll be in the following report. These rates are reported for grades 9 through 12, and we're just very thankful for the encouragement and efforts of our faculty and staff that keep our students there in school.
So our dropout rate was less 19 and 20 than 18 and 19, even with COVID.
Yes, sir, that is correct. This slide depicts our calculations for college, career, and military readiness. The first set of bar graphs is the cumulative view, and then Ms. Grady has broken it down for us so we can see what that would look like for just college-ready indicators and career and military grads that hit those indicators. We have to look at, where we were in 1920, and keeping in mind again that we had spring closure in 2020 and that remote instruction implementation in the fall of 2020. These calculations are based on high school only, so our 2 high school campuses factor into these percentages. And the next slide goes into more detail about what it means when I say indicator. So the college ready would be if a student completed a dual credit class and if they completed a dual credit class, if they passed an AP exam with a score of 3 or higher, if they met the TSI college readiness test for college, or the SAT and SAT. When we look at career military, we look at our CTE program, and we're looking at those completers within the cohort sequence, or if they obtained a certification. The last bullet there talks about a new initiative that we implemented in 2021 for college prep courses. This was an exciting offer for our students because it's not only providing them with high school credit, but it also provided them with a possible indicator that would count toward this accountability criteria. Is in partnership with SFA, and we've enjoyed, developing the crosswalk between our state standards and then the college and career standards that they have for English and math. Other post-secondary indicators are listed here in a little bit more detail, including graduates enrolled in Texas higher institutions of higher education. We saw a minimal difference there, 0.4 points. And then also, they measure students that start college, and within that 1 year, they're not enrolled in a developmental educational class, like a 099. When I was in college, I think they called it remedial math is what I remember. I think I had to enroll in that, actually. But now they call it 099 courses, but it's a way for us to know, are we really preparing students, to take that first leap into post-secondary opportunities? Are they prepared when they leave us in high school to make the transition into that pipeline? And this slide is very busy, but it is longitudinal data, and I do want to point out 2 corrections on column 15 and 16, our African American student group, instead of that saying 59.5, it should read 29.5. And if you look across, you'll see that, that would be within a consistent range. And then the other correction was on the 2 or more student group under 15-16, that should read 1.6% as well. If you look across the years there, you would see that that would provide, that correction makes the range more comparable and correct. In addition to that,
Would it be appropriate to pause here with questions or wait till the end of the report?
I'm comfortable either way.
Well, since we're on this page, if you
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
mind. 2 questions come to hit me right in the face on this, and that's a pretty substantial jump in economic disadvantaged. So that was question 1. Question 2 is retention rates from 1920 to 2021 on first grade, a substantial drop there from the 9.1% down to 3.2%. So I question that just because that percentage had been much higher in the previous 5-6 years. So any insight you can tell us on those 2 stats?
I would love to know what the actual numbers are when I'm looking at percentages, so that would probably help me answer a little bit better. I can attribute, and this is an assumption on a variable, would be that as our teacher teams are planning at K1 and 2, and with our House Bill 3 goals, we're not only looking at 3rd grade through 8th grade anymore. We're looking at pre-K through K1, 2 to have that vertical alignment. And so my hopes would be that's what contributes to the decline in retention, because there's a real intentional focus, like when we're planning with our primary teacher teams, that we are talking about, checking for understanding formatively and not waiting until the middle of the year reading assessment for a primary student to determine that we have an issue or a concern or that we need to intervene more quickly. Now, there may be other factors too, President Fitch, that I'm not pulling right now, but I'll be glad to, I've marked both of those in my charts, and
Okay.
I'll be glad to think more about that and also
Right.
get some ideas for my team.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Now we're kind of going to shift over from student data to our teacher data, and this first slide talks about cumulative average years of experiences. So when we compare the district to state, we're a little below, but we're comparable to state levels of experience. When you look at the district range, I believe it's like 8.8% to 9.7% years of experience, whereas the state range is 10.9% to 11.2%. So when we're looking at that range, it makes me feel comfortable, that we have the value added in of our teachers and the experience that they hold. And then related to that on the next slide is the average years of experience of teachers within the district. This staff information indicates that we're lower than the state. However, we're consistent across, or pretty consistent across years when you look at the district. 5.5 to 6.2% range. I'm sorry, excuse me, that was the state. For our district range, no, I said that correctly. Thank you. Okay, I got myself mixed up. So that's the range for the district, the 5.5 to 6.2 years, people that are staying with us that have experience and are staying here in our district. And then we look at teacher turnover rate in this longitudinal analysis from 16-17 all the way to 2021. And this, to me, was really exciting, especially when I looked at the last 3 years. It represents the recruiting efforts from our departments and also that consistency. When we listen to our teachers in previous years, going back to 16-17, we heard, we want consistency, we want, our tightly held systems in place. And when we see that we see the decrease in the 3 years, I know we're just going to keep building on that. This representation shows a view of students that are in different programs within the TAPER report, from bilingual ESL to career technology education, gifted and talented, and special education. I will point out that on the 2021 data, CTE, there's not a bar graph for CTE, the blue bar graph there. And the reason it's not is because it wasn't reported in the TAPER. The state is actually implementing a new coding system for that data set, and they're going to be tracking completers and concentrators. That's the new buzzwords from that area. So that's going to be currently implemented, and we'll no longer see that on our TAPER reports. I'm moving into section 2 now, and I think y'all, in the board book, I think it's on page 302, if that helps. This is our financial standard report. I will note that it's for 1920, so again, it's 2 years. And we're required to read the statement at the bottom that the unassigned general fund balance for the 1920 school year was $27,292,001. $292,001, which was 44% of the district's general fund total budgeted expenditures of $61,875,430. Section 3 of our annual report can be found in Board Book on page 336, and this is the information regarding our district accreditation status. We'll point out first and foremost that in the previous year, there was no district that was assigned an accreditation status. It's kind of like we weren't established accountability rating, we weren't established accreditation status, but in our historical, if you go back and look, our district's always been an accredited status. So we anticipate that to resume. Section 4 speaks to our campus performance objectives. These are developed every year based on the comprehensive needs assessment that's created at the district level and at the campus level, and we bring those to the board for board approval at the beginning of each school year. One really nice thing is on our required posting website, you're able to see what type of progress was made, and it gives you like a next steps, as in, did we complete our action steps, or is this something that's going to be ongoing for this year, 21-22? In Section 5, we speak to the reporting of violent or criminal incidents, and we're required to report this through our PEMS office each year. And on the following slide, we break down these reason codes for disciplinary action. You can tell that they're sorted by campus and reason code, and we have a total of 12 occurrences there. Section 6 is student performance in post-secondary institutions. This is a large section of your board book. I think it begins on page 501, but the actual district report is on page 915 because it includes all the districts in the state, but Nacogdoches ISD begins on page 915. This most current report really focuses on the 18-19 high school graduates. So again, we're looking at data sets from 2 years back. The next slide shows a clip of what I've referenced for Malcolm Rector Technical High School, now known as Margie Chumley Academy for Success, and Nacogdoches High School. And what this data lets us know, after our students leave the district, it helps us determine what happened next. Do they go to a 4-year university, a 2-year college, independent college? If we were unable to locate, for not found, or if they were non-trackable, like without information that was linked to one of those university codes that the state uses. Section 7 speaks to the board adopted House Bill 3 goals. These goals were adopted by our district, and the neat thing about that is that we monitor those and we're able to see where we're at, and our campuses have included those goals within their campus improvement plans, so it's kind of filtering down based on what our campuses need and what our district needs are, and we're seeing that alignment between our goals, and that goal is being able to reach I think by 2030, we're wanting to have 60% of all third grade students on reading level. And then the final section of the taper or annual report is our taper glossary on page 1064. And it provides information on the terminology that's referenced within the reports, and provides additional information if needed by stakeholders and our public. So the district's taper will be posted on our website within 2 weeks after this meeting. Paper copies will be available as well. And if you have any questions or comments after this evening, of course, feel free to reach out to us. Ms. Grady is our coordinator of compliance and continuous improvement, and we'll be glad to help out if we can. So at this time, I'm happy to entertain any questions or...
Dr. Curley, this is Coach Needleman. When we say we compare with state is including all the 1As all the way to the large 6As?
Yes, sir.
On your fair assessment, is it a fair way to be compared?
I understand what you're saying.
Let me take that question.
Okay.
In the comparable groups, it would be fair.
Right.
However, whenever you look at the aggregate that the state is actually looking at, really it's not. Our goal is to close the gap as you're looking at it. So what we can do is, to get a true sense of what we really look like, is to look at the 50 school districts that the state compares us to, or and we can actually look and see what does that look like, because they have the same socioeconomics, they have the same size of campuses. Of course, in that same group, you have charter and private schools as well. So we've got to take some cleaning to do, but we can actually figure out. But to your question, it really is. I like to look at the state, but what we need to look at is really look at ourselves from year to year. And to prove a point, Coach, I'm going to extend on that question a little bit. The last 2 years, we were closing the gap and with regards to teachers. That's everything you're hearing here is tremendous and valuable. But I also want to make sure that we know that I truly aspire to the point that we are data informed. We're going to see the data. It's going to inform us. And we're going to be value driven, not data driven. And if we're data driven, then we're running over this data and the teachers are thinking we're working our tails off and we're not. No. We're going to be data informed and value driven. The reason I say value driven, and what do we value? We value our educators. President Finch started at the very beginning by saying we thank you, the teachers, for the work you've been doing. So I want to point that direction for just a second, because if you go to the last 10 years and you look at data, we've lost 2% of our experience. And that's comparing apples to apples.
Right.
That's just looking at Nacogdoches to Nacogdoches. Over to the state, if you wanted to look at it, we were actually closing that gap, how unfair that may be. But we were at close to 7.3% in 2012, and they were at 8% with teacher experience with the district. But if you look at 10 years, from 2012 until now, we've really we have an exodus of experience. An exodus of experience, which means the taxpayers of Nacogdoches have paid for the wisdom and the development of teachers that are now teaching somewhere else.
Exactly.
And so the magic is, what do we value? And investing in the teachers and the lives that we have and retaining those teachers and comparing those numbers to ourselves, that's the true sense. Even and I love the question, because if we compare to the state, when it looks at that, now there's some places we do, and it's with the comparable groups, with some data. But when we're looking at, I'm drawn to the teacher retention and the teacher experience, because that's golden, because that has implications on everything else. It does a tremendous job for our teaching and learning, because we have fidelity. They're learning and they're able to grow and develop on that learning they did the year before, the year before, the year before. But if you're shifting staff, the new learning is constant. And it becomes a little frustrating, not just for our resources, but also for the support that the teachers give. But I love the question, because the state, comparing it to the state is a little bit different. But when we look at the numbers and compare it to ourselves, we have to answer to ourselves as what happened since 2012 to 2022, and we've lost 2% of our teachers. However, I can only speak for the last 2 years, and I'm not saying that it's all uphill. Is we are on an upward trajectory when you look at it, because it was 5.5 and it's 5.7, and we're still a year out. So that's the long answer to your question, Coach.
I knew my own answer.
Yes, I knew you did. Yes, sir.
I have one more comment. Ms. Fitch questioned the percentage of drop. Again, it's my personal experience through teaching and coaching. You cannot compare the students of this year with the next year or following year. There was a time that I had top 6, top 10, and there was a time I didn't have one on top 20s.
Yeah.
So sometimes it depends what kind of caliber students we have at the time.
Absolutely
Good
true,
point.
very true.
I want to bring one thing up, and maybe you would like to comment on that, but we've added a lot of social workers and counselors. Even we have a counselor for our teachers. And in the knockdown psychologically and emotionally and just physically of COVID, I think that we are not fully aware of where we could be and not just where we are. I think that we've had exceptional performance, and that's because of dedication and passion and support by co-workers and mentors and everything. It's a very complex equation, but there are many things being done. So I don't know if you can have any idea or any comments about the extra things we're doing to try to help students be successful and teachers and other workers, employees to be successful.
Thank you, Dr. Groman. The first thing that comes to my mind is the systems that are being developed, not only for our faculty and staff, but for our students and those expectations. I can remember just in my own educational experiences at different places, I would get somewhere and I'd be like, how do we do this? It could be as simple as how to fill out a travel form. Well, it wasn't written down anywhere, right? And so that was one of Dr. Hill's big initiatives, is for us to have written procedures and guidelines for our different department areas, because that way we're building capacity, and we're kind of cross-training, because if Jolene's not at work that day, then someone can go look in the written procedures and guidelines, and they can say, oh, wait a minute, this is exactly how we do this. And I see that transferring over for students also. When we communicate clearly the expectations, I'll take our CHAMPS discipline management program resource we used. I was at a campus today. I got to do lunch duty, and all the students knew what a level 0 was, and they held their hands up because that expectation has been set. And, it becomes automatic behavior and allows us to focus on other things that are coming to us on a daily. I don't know.
There's one other area that I left out, or I failed to mention, but the chief, we've had a really good success in your leadership with our discipline and just keeping things from just totally falling apart. And we appreciate that, and all the people under your direction.
And Dr. Corley, I might add to Dr. Groman's point, some things that we've done even in the last couple of years to arm our teachers with the best resources. For instance, we did not have an LMS. A learning management system it was non-existent. So teachers being able to use resources and share resources across the board is invaluable, because it's no longer in a file on the third drawer halfway in. It's now living, breathing curriculum that can be adjusted and shared with. The technology, just the technology that they can come and you can watch and sit down. And I invite anybody to go in and watch our teachers work in a PLC and watch teaching and learning sit with them in PLC when they bring their devices and they're sitting down and they're able to do it on the fly, where they're adjusting and tweaking and perfecting their lessons. The other thing that they're doing is they're preparing for the future. The future is online assessments. So if we're going to do online assessments, then the students have to have access to technology and be able to use and develop those fine motor skills on how to take a spelling test in the very young grades, so that whenever they get to the older grades, how do they sit there and write and be proficient in the writing that's going to be measured. So to your question, the amount of connectivity and the amount of connection that's happening, and the state-of-the-art teaching now that connects not just Nacogdoches to Nacogdoches, but Nacogdoches to Region 7, to surrounding school systems that we have, and even throughout this great state in this country, where you can reach out for resources that you would have never had access to if it weren't for the infrastructure that Kirsten and her staff are setting up with regards to technology. Technology is just another pencil. It's not going to do all the work, but boy, it's a nice pencil when it's sharp. And that's what we're talking about when we see the resources that our teachers have. What does that have? I go back to what we value. We value teachers. We want to keep teachers. We got to teach them how they're being taught in the universities. The universities are giving them devices. They're talking about resources. And we're doing that, so we're going to attract teachers, and they're going to want to stay here. They're not going to look for Houstons and the Dallases and places. They're going to look at places that they can actually get the same resources and support that we provide here. So all things point back. I pointed back to the teacher. How do we hold on to these teachers? We equip them with the right tools and the mechanisms. They love being able to sit together and plan together, not in isolation at a desktop computer. That was effective. That was at one time. But things have kind of adjusted and changed. So to your question, there's so many others that can come up from the folks that are here that support teaching and learning about the support that we're providing. But those are just the few that I can mention as well, Dr. Roman.
Any other questions from the board? All right, this is a public hearing, so I want to open it and ask if there's anyone in attendance tonight that would like to speak in regard to the TAPER report we just received. All right, hearing none, we will close the public hearing. I'm going to make one final comment, and that was I very much appreciated the presentation with the graphs and the bar charts. It was a nice format to be able to digest the information. Thank you. All right. Next item on our agenda tonight is public comment. We did not receive any requests to address the board tonight as outlined in our meeting notice. If you're interested in making public comment at a future board meeting, please refer to the meeting notice for instructions on how to do so. That will take us to item 7, our consent agenda. Unless removed from consent agenda, all items listed will be acted on with one motion. If there is a board member who wishes to discuss an item on consent agenda separately, please indicate the agenda letter, and it will be set aside for further discussion and a separate vote. All right. Hearing none, I will open the floor for a motion.
Madam President, I move the board approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Naramond. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. App. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. That will take us to item 8, our adjournment. I will open the floor for a motion.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Mrs. Winslow. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Reverend Irvin. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for your time and service tonight. We appreciate y'all.